Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we are going over my Storm Burst Totems League starter that I am still playing, and we will go over how this build is looking like, what it's feeling like. We'll go over all my stats, my DPS, my defense, my trees and all of that good stuff. Let's get straight into it. A little preface, do remember that this build is completely SSF. This character and this build are solo self-found. That is what I play, so everything you're seeing was made by me, either found or crafted. First things first then, the juicy bits. What is my DPS looking like? So right now I am level 91, and when I am fully buffed in combat with my flasks up and all my abilities going and my totems being at max channeling stacks, I am looking at about 800,000 DPS per totem. And because I have 3 totems, that equals to about 2.4 million DPS in total. When your Storm Burst Totems are spawned, they have to build up to a certain amount of stacks to reach a full channeling stack, which is when they do the most amount of damage. I believe it starts from 1 and goes all the way up to 30. So over a few seconds they will build those stacks up, and that is when they deal the most damage. So when my totems are at that point and I'm fully buffed and whatnot, that is what my DPS is like, around 2.4 million. Let's talk about my defense, and once again the same rules apply for my defense. This is when I'm in combat, fully buffed, flasks up and whatnot. I am coming in at about 50,000 effective hit points. First of all, my life and mana. So I've got a bit over 4,000 both life and mana because I utilize Mind Over Matter Keystone, which means 50% of the damage I take will be taken from my mana before my life. Therefore, I need to make sure to have just as much mana as I do have life. Now, I do use an aura determination, so quite a chunk of that mana will be reserved. So as for my unreserved mana, I've got about 2,700, still pretty decent. And I've got some pretty decent mana regen coming in at 545, and as for my life, I've got about 274. My evasion and armor, so I'm coming in at about 6,800 evasion, which equals to about 43% chance to evade, and 7,700 armor, which equals to about a 66 physical damage reduction. My block and spell block chance are pretty low. That is probably my most lacking part of my defense, is my block, so I do need to work on that. I've got about 24% block chance and about 2% spell block chance, so it's pretty bad, but I can work on that at a later date. And my spell suppression chance, which I've been working on quite hard, I've been trying to maintain that as high as I can. I've got about 68% spell suppression chance. As for my resistances, I am fully kept on all of my resistances apart from chaos, but I'm standing at a very comfortable 46% chaos resistance, which for softcore is totally acceptable, and you don't really need to worry about it that much because there is not a whole lot of chaos damage in the game. So 46% is just enough for me. Lastly, some miscellaneous movement speed modifier. When I've got my Quicksilver and my Silver Flask up, I've got about an 88% movement speed modifier, which makes clearing maps and doing maps quickly quite nice. Moving on to my gear then, I will not go through every single piece of gear because I feel like that would be a little bit boring. So what I will do instead is put all of my pieces of gear up on the screen at one time, and if you would like, you can pause the video and you can read through each piece of my gear, see how it's looking like, and see how I've managed to get to the point I have gotten to with my DPS and defense. And remember, all the gear that you are seeing was either found and dropped in a map, or it was crafted by me. Most of it was indeed crafted by me, using essences, using a harvest crafting station and other crafting materials. What I will do, however, is I will quickly go over the pieces of gear that I am currently hunting and farming for. And these are the most important pieces of gear on this character, on this build. And I have made a completely separate video talking about this build in general, about the mechanics of this build, about how it works, about how to scale the damage, about how to be tanky, and about the proper gear that you need. So if you want a really in detail video about that, I will link it in the description. As for now, I will quickly mention the things that I am, once again, farming for. First of all, I have a profane wand, which is the one that I need. However, I'm trying to roll +1 level to all lightning spell skill gems on that. So that is what I'm currently doing for my wand. My shield, I am still hunting for a shaper influenced shield that has the modifier of +1 to maximum number of summoned totems. That single modifier will increase my damage by a whopping 35%. It is absolutely crucial to get that shaper shield, and that is my #1 item that I am farming for. As for my gloves, I am farming for shaper gloves, once again, that have exposure on hit to lightning resistance, applying from -11% to -13%, exposure to enemies on hit. That would mean that then I no longer have to use Wave of Conviction, which will make the build smoother. For my boots, I'm looking for Elder influenced boots with increased duration on them, so that I do not have to use an increased duration support skill gem for Arcane Cloak and Wrath. And then my belt, I am currently trying to craft a Stygian Vice so that I can socket some jewels into it, increase my DPS and defense by that little bit more. However, I do have a really good belt that I actually dropped in a T16 map, so it might be a little bit hard to get a better belt than that. As for the rest of my gear that I haven't specifically mentioned, which would be like my helmet, my body armor, my amulet and my rings, I am actively trying to make them better. I'm actively trying to re-roll them into better stats, better modifiers, better rolls and all this. So I will constantly be upgrading them. They will probably change a lot. As for my flasks, I use a granite, a jade and a silver flask that is all automated, and it gets used upon reaching full charges, and I get 2 to 3 charges when I'm being hit, so they are always refilling themselves and automatically being used when they are at full charges. So I've pretty much always got these 3 flasks up when I'm in combat, and then I've got a life flask that removes corrupted blood and bleeding, and then I've got a quicksilver flask for some increased movement speed, and it is a quicksilver flask of the cheetah, so I've also got a special modifier on it that further increases my movement speed. Also, really quickly forgot to mention that I have a cobalt jewel socketed into my tree, which increases my cast speed while holding a shield, increases my maximum life, and increases all elemental resistances. Moving on to my skill tree and the Wildwood Ascendancy, I am basically copying 1-for-1 Tatiantel's skill tree for this build, because this is his build. The only difference so far is that for my last few points, I have invested them into an increased chance to suppress spell damage, because I really want to try and get that as high as I can. I want to be more tanky, I want to die less. But I am planning on refunding those points when I am probably at around level 95 to then put them into increased elemental damage, specifically the Divine Judgment node, which gives me 50% increased elemental damage. And on the way to that, I've got a further 12% and 10% increase in elemental damage. As for my ascendancy, it is exactly the same as it is in Tatiantel's. So I've got Arcane Blessing, Ritual of Awakening, Pursuit of Faith, and Divine Guidance. As for my Wildwood Ascendancy, I have gone with the Primalist. No surprise there, I think most people have. The customizability of the Primalist with the charms is absolutely phenomenal. I am really enjoying that. So far I have unlocked 2 out of 3 charms, so I am working my way to the 3rd charm, but the 2 charms that I have unlocked, for my first one I have taken up Culling Strike, which is really nice. It's a massive DPS boost. Basically, I execute enemies at 10% HP remaining. This is really nice for bossing. And then on that same charm, I've also got Recoup 8% of damage taken by your totems as life. And on my other charm, I've also got Recoup 10% of damage taken by your totems as life. So if I am correct, I am recouping 18% of damage taken by my totems as life, which is quite nice. And then also on the second charm, I have a 13% chance to gain an endurance charge when I am hit, which is quite nice because that also synergizes with, I believe it's my boots, where I have an implicit on it that gives me 4% increased damage per endurance charge. As for my Atlas tree then, I have spec'd into 3 things primarily, 2 of them more than the other one. So I have spec'd into essences, blight and heist. Heist being the one that I've spec'd the least into, because I thought that I wanted to do a lot of heist this league, but as I've been doing heist, I've actually been wanting to do it less, and as I've been doing blight, I've been wanting to do that more because I've really been enjoying blight. So I've spec'd the most points into blight, I think, and then into essences, because I am trying to farm as many essences as I can, because they are really useful for SSF, because you can't buy any items, so I can only rely upon my own crafting. So essences are extremely useful, especially with the fact that you can do them in low tier maps, and they are just as rewarding because essences do not scale with map tier. Blight, on the other hand, does, and I've been doing blight in tier 14, 15 and 16 maps, and it's been really nice. My build is good for blight because all I have to do is place a totem down and I can stay away from the big pack, not worrying about getting hit, and my totems can deal quite a good amount of damage to that as well. I've been getting a ton of currency from blight. I think I've had like 2 divine orb drops, I've had loads of divination cards, and I've just in general really been enjoying blight. And I am thinking about making a blight video all on itself, so if that's something that you guys are interested in, please let me know, because I would be willing to make a whole blight video explaining it fully in detail, giving you tips and tricks and recommending builds. Heist then, I'm going to try to get into heist a little bit later on, possibly, maybe when my build is a bit stronger, because I really don't want to die in heist. We'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll spec out a heist completely and spec into something else, I'm not sure. Lastly then, I just wanted to talk a bit about maps. So I'm generally running tier 16 maps quite comfortably, corrupted tier 16 maps. I'm filling out my Atlas, I'm nearly there. I've got maybe 20-30 maps left until I'm fully done with the Atlas, and I'm quite comfortable with doing nearly every map. I still do have to look out for some modifiers, they can be really dangerous, and I also cannot do the Affliction League mechanic in tier 16 maps because it is absolutely insane and it makes the monsters super strong, and some of the bosses are just near enough unkillable. And sometimes I do have to miss out some other league mechanics, such as maybe Delirium or Ritual or Ultimatum, as they can get pretty rippy as well. So hopefully in the coming days I will fill out my Atlas completely. I am trying to do as many bosses as I can as well. I've got 2 Void Stones so far, so I'm hunting for the other 2 as well. And in general, I am just trying to constantly be progressing within the game, going deeper and deeper into the end game. So let me know guys if there's any particular videos you would like to see, maybe further on this character or about anything else in Path of Exile. But other than that, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, night or day, and I will see you around.